Hey everyone. Well, today there's something very special happening. I'm playing against one of my students. This is Stefan. Now Stefan has just crossed over 1200 on chess.com Rapid, and today I'm playing a training game with him to help him work on his English opening. I'm going to play my usual King's Indian defense, and we're going to see how I play the game. We're going to see how Stefan plays the game, and there's going to be some feedback, of course, given to Stefan after the game. Now, I'm not taking this for granted. 1200 is a good level of chess, and Stefan in particular has very good attacking instincts. One of the things that I'm working on with Stefan actually is to moderate his attacking instinct somewhat. He's very good when he's on the attack, but one thing that we've agreed that we need to work on together is the ability to outplay the opponent first a little bit. Because Stefan has a tendency to go for checkmate right from the beginning. Now the English opening actually is supposed to be more of a quieter positional opening, which is interesting given Stefan's natural style. Generally, white will look to play on the queen side. This pawn on c4 does a good job of establishing some space on the queen side from the very beginning, whereas black typically is going to play on the king side. So d6 is preparing the move e5, and we're going to have a pawn structure where once I've played e5, my pawns are pointing towards the king side, whereas the English opening, as it's usually played at the highest levels, we'll see white look to play on the queen side, as I've already mentioned. So the move e4 is quite interesting because what this now does is it creates a couple of outpost squares for me to potentially look to take advantage of. The d4 square and also the d3 square are both options for me to bring a knight into, particularly if I can eliminate this knight on f3, which is guarding the d4 square. But first I'm just going to develop knight to c6. I want to get all the pieces off their starting squares before going for anything too critical. Even at high levels of chess, 1800, 1900, 2000, 2100, you still need to follow the opening fundamentals. But yes, this square on d4 is a natural target for me to bring a knight into. This setup here is a bit unusual for the English opening. Not quite sure what the idea of this is. I mean, it does prevent me from playing d5. It's a quite strong clamp on that pawn break, but I'm not actually planning that pawn break. What I'm going to do instead is play bishop to g4. Now that's going to pin the knight, and if I'm given a move, I won't actually capture that knight, but I'll instead bring my own knight in. So let's start with this. Now all of my pieces are off their starting squares, and one idea is to bring the knight in here. If he plays h3, then I probably will go ahead and take. But if I'm given a move here, then most likely I'll play knight to d4. So the concept of outposts is something to always watch out for. Grabbing good squares with your pieces. Okay, so queen to b3 is interesting. That's attacking the loose pawn on b7. Now, one way that I always like to try to train my students to think is that when your opponent makes a threat, ask yourself whether you need to react to it. So my first thought here is not to play a move like rook to b8 or b6. My first thought is whether I can actually play something else. Because if I, for example, capture here and then he has to take back, then I get this knight to d4 move in, and he doesn't have time to take here. This is the difference between active defense and passive defense. Something like rook to b8 is responding to the threat directly, whereas something more active, like initiating a capture, a forcing move, that's a way to look to play more actively. So let's see. Can I capture and then play knight to d4? This is my first thought. Well, in that case, he has his queen attacked and also the bishop attacked, and it would seem to me that the only way that he can really defend the bishop while also getting the queen out of danger is to bring the queen back here. Now in that case, I've got the knight to the square that I wanted it to be on. But I also have to consider the passive defense. I mean, you have to consider everything. This is the thing. Even though, according to my instinct, I might not want to play this, maybe it is actually the right way to go. But my first thought is probably the best thought here, to take and then get this knight to this strong square. And one thing about this is that the light squared bishop for white is actually not a good piece. Once it recaptures, and I play the knight here, the light squared bishop for white is going to be stuck behind its own pawn on e4. So white has to take back here, and while we wait for Stefan to make that move, if you're enjoying the video so far, do go ahead and subscribe to the channel. I do a lot of different content around chess, including game reviews, games where I play people of different rating levels. And actually Stefan has gone for the queen to b7 move, which I didn't think he would be able to play. So then, I'm faced with a critical position. And in a critical position where your opponent plays a move that you weren't expecting, you need to stop, recalibrate, and ask yourself what to do next. Well, there's a few options here. Well, one of them is to take this bishop, after which I guess Stefan could take the knight, but then I could take the rook, and I'm going to be material up in that line. That's quite easy to see, I think. So I feel as though Stefan rushed his move here. He perhaps failed to see the defense of capturing here first and then bringing the queen back. Or maybe he thought that this created a threat against the knight and he'd be winning the material back that way. Okay, so I can see one way to play which is certainly very strong. So I'll have that one in my back pocket. Bishop takes bishop. If king takes bishop, then I move the knight out of the way and I'm a piece up. That's pretty easy. If I take the bishop and he takes the knight, then I take the rook and he takes back, and if we count material again, it's material in my favour. So another way that I could look to play this is to bring the bishop over here. That would save the knight and also defend the bishop which is under attack. So in case of, right, so just follow along, knight to d4, and then if bishop takes bishop, then knight takes on f3 at the end. I do like this one though. It's the most forcing way of playing, and it's also going to be the way of playing that gets the most material off the board. So when you're winning the game, the focus often shifts. When you're up material, you stop thinking about how to, let's say, checkmate the enemy king, and you start thinking about trades, or at least that's often the case. There's always exceptions. But yeah, I do have an extra piece here, so I can start thinking about a queen trade, for example. I could start thinking about, just trading pieces and ending up in an endgame which is simpler. But of course, if an opportunity to attack comes along, then I would certainly take that as well. Like, this knight is very well placed here. If a move like rook to e1 comes, then I've got ideas of creating a fork. I could also think about bringing the queen into the light squares, supported by the knight. So I think there's going to be a good lesson for Stefan to learn from this game. It was actually quite recently that we made the shift from 10-minute games, which is what he was playing, to 15 plus 10 games, which is a longer time format. And I feel as though sometimes when I look at his games, he has a tendency still to play as though he was still using the 10 plus 0 format. So what can we do here? We've got rook to b1. Well, I do like this idea of bringing the queen into the light squares. That seems very natural. Also, by bringing the queen to d7, I can think about playing rook to b8, and that would force queen to a6, and the white queen looks like it's getting a bit short of squares in that situation. So I think this is absolutely fine. Queen to d7 with the idea of bringing the rook over here or bringing the queen over into this square. As we review this game after it's done, I mean, assuming that I'm able to go on and convert, of course, that's still not a given. I am up a piece, but you never want to relax in chess. But if I do go on to win, probably my feedback to Stefan will be along these lines, that he needs to take his time a bit more, particularly in critical moments, and calculate. I mean, yeah, the decision to capture on b7, I saw that was not really possible before he played it. So I had that in my wheelhouse, but still, when it came, I had to just make sure that I wasn't wrong. But yeah, in this case, up a piece, and it's going to be tough for him to come back now. Now, if you're interested in getting chess coaching yourself, if you're, let's say, under 1,000 or between 1,000 and 1,500, and you're looking to improve your own chess, and you're enjoying the way that I'm commenting on this game and the way that I'm going to help Stefan improve, then click the link in the description below. I help ambitious adults improve their chess, so if you'd like to explore working together, then definitely click that link and we can have a chat and see if that'll be a good fit. So the thing is that Stefan is now using his time, but it's a bit late. You want to use your time earlier in the game. It's not much good thinking and considering about what to do when you're already down a piece. And Stefan has a tournament coming up, actually. He's going to be playing in an over-the-board classical tournament in about 3 weeks from now, and we want to get him as strong as he can be before that tournament. So this will be a really good experience for him. So we've got a threat against the knight. I think that's actually a good plan. This knight is very strong, and White's position would be improved if it could be eliminated. But when you're facing a threat, it's a good idea to consider responding to that threat with a bigger threat. I mean, one option here would be actually to play c5. The queen would be fine because it's defended by the knight. But I do like this idea of just continuing on with rook to b8. So now there's not time to take this knight because the white queen is under attack. This will be more feedback for Stefan. It's not just about looking at the way that he played the game in the early part of our match together today, but also the mindset that I've got. And, yeah, I mean, obviously I'm a 2100 rated player and he's trying to get closer to my way of thinking. So if he can look at the way that I'm trying to convert this game, then that'll be helpful for him too. So the queen had to move to a3. I think that was the only square for it, actually. And now I can continue creating threats, starting with rook to b6. So again, playing with the initiative. This is the way to improve your position with threats. So now there's a semi-open b file. This b file is semi-open. There's a white pawn on b2, but if I can get my two rooks over to the b file, then I have ideas of being able to target that pawn of white's. Other ideas? Well, I could look to reinforce the knight now. If white were to capture the knight, then I can recapture and have a strong pawn on d4. And remember, every trade actually brings me closer to a winning endgame. So I'm not so worried about seeing trades. In fact, actually, that's good for me. The way that white could be able to come back into this game is by trying to keep pieces on the board and to try and keep things complicated. So knowing that, I'm just going to try and keep everything under control, keep my king safe, trade as much as I can, and look to have a smooth victory. This is one thing about players, let's say at the 1,000 to 1,500 level, they can sometimes be a little bit prone to letting winning positions get out of control. So when you're up a piece, you should go on to win that, and if you don't, then that's a weakness that obviously you can go to work on, because you want to win your winning positions at a bare minimum. It's hard enough to gain the advantage. So when you do gain the advantage, you've got to bring the full point home. So what can white do here? Well, the queen is attacked and it can't go to any of these squares because of the rook. It can't go here either. It can go there, that's a trade, but the problem with that is that trade is actually good for me. As I mentioned, trading queens is something that I'm actually quite happy to encourage. So given everything I was just saying about wanting to simplify the position, I'm going to go ahead and follow my own advice. We'll trade queens, and this should make things easier to play for me. Now I can continue to improve with a threat, so the knight is on a4 at the moment, attacking my rook. So let's notice that for a start. So the rook needs to move, but I want to move the rook to a place where I can win the time back. So rather than retreating it passively to a square like b8, I'm going to move it to a square where it creates a threat. So I'm always trying to get my opponent to react to my moves. Now he could defend it, that's certainly possible, but it means that it's my turn again, and now I'm the one who gets to decide what to do. Like, let's just look at the alternative. If I had moved backwards, then it would be white's turn to come up with a move of his own choosing. But now, after this, the knight has to move, and then I get to make a move of my choosing. That's kind of the idea. Okay, so the knight does move back, and I've got the opportunity here to bring the other rook over to this semi-open b file, and I expect what that's going to do is it's going to provoke the move b3. Now after b3 I won't be able to attack along the b file anymore, but I might have some possibilities of playing a5, I guess. Not really too sure. Let's just see. But again, this is another move which wins a tempo. So after I've improved my rook from a8 to b8. It's better on b8, I think we can agree, than it is on a8, where it was doing nothing. Then white has to react, I think probably with b3, and then once again it's my turn, and I can think of something else to do. Okay, or he could take the knight. That was also possible, because that answers this threat with a capture, so obviously I need to take back. But you know what, now the knight has to move, and I guess it's going to have to go there if it wants to keep hold of this pawn. But he doesn't do that. Again, perhaps a case of not looking carefully enough at what I was threatening. I think in that position he had to go backwards, back to d1, in order to keep hold of the b2 pawn. By going forwards, I get another trade, so I'm again closer to the end game that I'm hoping to achieve. And after he takes back, then I am going to be able to capture the pawn on b2, and we might get another trade. Once again, I'd be very happy to see that. If we get this trade, that's absolutely fine for me. Okay, and now I've got this beautifully placed rook on the second rank, also controlling the only open file on the board. And if it wasn't difficult for white to play this before, it certainly is now. So this is under attack. He has to move it forward, I suppose, and now I can attack this pawn. So you can see that every move I'm playing, I'm trying to create threats. And to Stefan's credit, he's doing the same. So he's now attacking this pawn. Okay, so he's looking to get his rook active too. Good move. Actually a good move. I must admit, I might have been a little bit casual on that last move, but it's okay. I just need to keep things under control. The real thing I want to prevent is this pawn from getting too scary. On the other hand, this pawn of mine is also something that I can look to play with. So let's just do a calculation here. I have the time, so let's do it. If I go here, I think that's going to provoke the capture. That's the most natural move anyway. And then I would push my pawn. Now, what is the defense here for white, if any? Well, he'd have to, I think, try bringing the rook back, and then I can play this, and he can't bring it here because the pawn would be defending it in that case. So let's say here, here, here instead. Well, in that case, I can always just take this one, eliminating the only real danger in the position. So I think this is actually going to be very strong. This check is not dangerous. I can always just block with the bishop. That's absolutely fine. But it's important to play the most critical moves, even in a simplified position. I expect we're going to see this, and then push the pawn. He'll probably have to come over here to bring the rook back, because the threat of advancing all the way up to d1 is something that he can't ignore. And indeed that is what we get. So this was my idea. He doesn't have enough time to bring this pawn down. This pawn here is simply faster. I think he has to bring the rook to this square. This is the only defensive attempt, because bringing the rook to this square means that I can play this, and then he wouldn't be able to bring it to this square. This is what I've calculated anyway. My opponent could surprise me. Also want to be a bit careful about not losing this pawn, because even if you're up material, you can find sometimes that a pair of passed pawns can become scary. Okay, so we get the check. I thought we might see that, but I did have the bishop to f8 move prepared there. And so he's looking to defend with the king. Okay, interesting. Now if I play rook to a1, that seems to be the first move that comes to mind. He can't bring the king here in that case, because that's guarded by the pawn. So rook to a1 actually forces the king to go to g2, and then I can play d2. And it feels to me that it's not going to be possible for white to stop that pawn now. He might have been thinking that I was not going to play this check, and he might have expected this straight away, in which case his king does get in and might be able to have some chance of defending the pawn. But yeah, I think he had to bring his rook back like this. It's very passive, but it was the only defensive try. So now the king, well, it's actually a forced move. This is not a choice that white has here. There are no other legal squares for the king to go to other than to g2. And the next move I'm going to play is d2. I can even pre-move that actually. King to g2, d2. And how's white going to stop that pawn? I don't think he can. Don't think he can. And then there are even ideas of just checkmating the white king. Or even if this pawn does become scary, I could always consider giving up the rook for the pawn. Okay, so we get this move, which is okay. That's interesting. I'll say that that's an interesting move. If I take his idea is to come down, but then I can promote, and the queen at the very least will always have control over the d file. So this is the move that we're going to see. I promote, and yeah, he's so here, 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 and I can just take it. That's the simplest way of playing. Simple is good. Simple is good. We don't want counterplay. We don't want any complications. Obviously I can't take the pawn because the rook is pinning that one. But promoting to a queen means that the queen will be guarding against the advance of the d-pawn. There could also be a checkmate here. I'm not even sure. There could, let's see. Is there this sort of thing? Maybe that's even stronger. I mean, advancing this pawn, I could just take it, but I could also give this check and win the rook. It's probably even stronger now that I look at things. And I think in this position, Stefan could pretty reasonably resign. He's done a decent job of trying to create some complications with these passed pawns, but against an extra queen and an extra bishop, it's not going to be enough. But it's up to him. Let's see what he does. Let's see what he does. What else could white try here? He could perhaps sacrifice the rook. Does that do anything? Still looking at the forcing moves, but no, that doesn't actually help, because then advancing to d7 is still met by queen takes d7 at the very least. Let's see if I can calculate a checkmate here, because there may actually be one in a position like this. So it's interesting to look at d7. Okay, he plays the rook there. All right. So, I mean, one idea here is also to just give up the queen and then win with the extra rook and extra bishop. It's also tempting. I can also just eliminate this one, but is there a checkmate? So check here, queen comes there. It's not so clear how to actually finish the game off in that situation. What about this? Check here, then again here, then there. There's also this move, which cuts off this square. Advance this pawn, and then this one is threatened. So sometimes the check is actually not the strongest move. Sometimes the threat is the strongest way to play. Now this move, e4, is going to threaten queen to f1 checkmate. So this is probably an unexpected move, maybe not the type of thing that Stefan might have been expecting, but yeah, sometimes building the mating net is the best way to keep up the pressure. I expect that a lot of people here would have just taken the pawn, or maybe even given up the queen to just eliminate all possible danger. Yeah, so we get the resignation. Yeah, good game, Stefan. We'll review this one together, and we'll learn from it and come out stronger from the experience.